everybody. Welcome to Think From Home with Confirm It. I'm Holly Carter, and on the screen here, you'll see with me one of my colleagues, Dina Otero. So as promised, we were going to spend a little bit of time today talking about different books that we're going to be reading this summer. So we're facing Memorial Day weekend right now, and well, gotta have something to do sitting by the pool or on the beach or your backyard. So Dina, you came to us today with some ideas on books that you're reading, and we'll talk about some that I'm reading. Hopefully everybody has their adult beverage of choice, because this is Think and Drink. So Dina has a little cocktail going there. I brought my beer into Sam Adams this week. That changes on a weekly basis. But anyway, let's get into it. What books are you going to recommend for everybody's summer reading?
Yeah, I've got some good ones today. So the first book I'm going to recommend is something I actually read. This is not a new book. It was released back in 2005. I actually read it very early in my career, and it's Blink by Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh,
it was an interesting find because one of my first jobs out of college, for the first company I worked for, this was a book that was provided in our company book club. And I read it, and it was probably a really great recommendation by my company at the time, but also a great read for anyone that's going through any sort of professional changes, whether it's a new role, new company, new career path or change. And it's really about how you can focus on instincts and celebrate quick decisions. So it talks a lot about decision making, understanding why instincts are important, but also understanding when instincts can betray us. And so Malcolm Gladwell defines it as thin slicing. So he basically talks about the benefit of quick decisions and how that's different from impulses, because you as an individual can really make smart decisions with small amounts of information. And Holly, I know you can believe and talk about this all day, because it really ties into our day-to-day around analysis paralysis. Like,
yeah.
We can get so caught up with data and information, and it's like you almost get into your head by having too much, and going into that more isn't always better. And as professionals, often we kind of distract ourselves sometimes by having extra information.
Yeah.
So there's a quote actually within the book that I really love, and it's often a sign of expertise is noticing what doesn't happen. So it's not just knowing everything, but also recognizing where there's gaps.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, so really good book, definitely recommend it. I think it helps you, this book in general, there's a lot of stories and use cases in this book, but the overall concept is it's going to help you become more of a critical thinker and really understand the process of decision making.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell is a fantastic author. I've read a few things by him in the past. What the Dog Saw is one. Another one that I read was, of course, I'm drawing a blank on the name now. It was fantastic. It was kind of a behavioral economics spin. I just can't think of the name of it, but I'm gonna have to check that one out, because that's one that I have not yet read. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That is your summer list. That's why I'm recommending it. Oh, the doggies are around.
Yes, the dogs are around. The beauties of working from home.
Yeah, absolutely. So give Holly a second to
open
her door. Well, I'll take a drink break while she comes back.
Of course. I figured it would be better to close the door so we didn't have to deal with their interruptions. I'm assuming that one of my neighbors assumed that they had the right to walk out of their house.
Yeah.
But my dogs don't agree with that choice. I'm
surprised my cat hasn't jumped on camera yet. So
that's okay. We're looking forward to seeing him. Your cat is horrible, and Bogart does love to join live streams. So
he really does. Yeah. Okay. So my next book, my other recommendation is similar concept, but on a much more humorous side, and it is called You Are a Badass: How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life. So this is actually an entire series. The author is Jen Sincero. She has really built an entire conglomerate around this You Are a Badass series. The very first book, which is the one I'm recommending, I'm going to talk about a little bit more, was the first one she wrote. She now also has a podcast called You Are a Badass, and she has multiple books around this in different areas. So she has another one coming out, I believe, later this year around building habits. So identifying the bad habits that you have, and then something that's more successful, as well as around motivation. And then I believe she also has another book about being a badass around making money. Now, these books are geared more towards women, I will say, but there's nothing wrong with it. You're basically still getting amazing input. She basically breaks out each book, each chapter with little bite-sized stories and what she learned from her personal experience and how everyone can essentially take the same kind of idea. It's really, shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, so it really ties into identifying and changing self-sabotaging beliefs and behaviors. And it's something that you actually do not realize that you do. It's just so ingrained in our daily mindset that reading her side of it makes you identify and realize that you do it quite often. It's human nature. It's not, and this is why I'm saying it's geared towards women, but it's relevant to everyone because everyone has different ways of kind of getting into our own heads. So I clearly had a theme around today, and that was not my intention, but when I was planning on the book that I wanted to talk about today, the different points, I clearly was focusing on getting past procrastination and indecision. And these two books are really great around that. And those are my recommendations for the summer. I highly recommend them. I've listened to a couple episodes on her podcast. She's funny. She's a really great person to listen to.
I'm going to have to check that one out too. That sounds really good. I think in general, I think people self-sabotage more than they realize.
Yeah.
And it's a tough time right now. I'm going through my LinkedIn feed. There's a lot of people that are struggling because of COVID-related challenges and the economic impact. So, if we're able to get rid of some of that self-sabotage, I think a lot of people will be a lot better off. So that kind of actually relates pretty well to the book that I wanted to refer to. You said before yours was old. I got to beat. The first book I want to talk about, and it comes with a disclaimer. It was written in 1908, which, initially the thought is, oh God, what can somebody actually know from 1908 about modern day? And I would challenge that there's quite a bit to know. The author is Wallace Wattles. That's a mouthful.
That is,
and it's a book called The Science of Getting Rich. So now I kind of when I read the title initially, it was recommended to me a million years ago, and I read it a million years ago too. But initially, when I got into the book, I'm thinking this has got to be some kind of pyramid scheme or some kind of satanic cult or something like that, and it's not. And you will find in the book, and this is where the disclaimers kind of come in, the book does have a lot of religious references throughout. But I think it's a matter of kind of understanding. I should say it's not just religious, it's religious and metaphysical. And I think it's a matter of understanding that a book is what you walk away from, what you take away from it. You don't have to read every word and think that it's absolute. I think it's a matter of taking the tips and applying them. So for someone who is, maybe not interested in that type of, religious angle, that spiritual angle, metaphysical angle, I wouldn't say cast off the book, because what they're teaching in the end is pretty valuable. The basic idea of the book, just to not give anything away, but explain why I think it's such a valuable book, is that he talks about how if you want to get rich, the way to get there is to be goal-oriented. Know what you're going after. Put aside every excuse that you have ever tried to pull up. Like, it's better to be, give your money away. It's better to do this. It's better to do that. Well, I can't do it because. So he basically, in the first chapter, obliterates every excuse you can possibly come from. Now, again, because of the timing, he does make religious references. So again, you just have to ignore that if that's offensive to you. But it's not a religious book. It's a matter of those little references here and there. But again, eliminating all of the excuses focusing on a goal and visualizing that goal until the point where it is so firmly set in your mind that you can see nothing else. And then acting on that goal. And he talks about the actions. For example, one of the best bits in that book that I found was when he talks about the actions. He talks about how you're not just taking actions that, you know, will be for your goal tomorrow. It's a matter of knowing what your goal is. So say my goal is, you know, to be a millionaire. Okay. If I want to be a millionaire, I need to be acting like a millionaire right now. And that does not mean spending every penny I have. But for example, maybe my goal is that I'm going to be a business owner, and that's where I get my millions. Therefore, in my current role, my actions should be as if it were the current role were my own business. I should be behaving when I respond to a customer complaint as if that's my customer for my business, and that person is the key to my success. When I'm working, when I'm doing whatever my task is for the current day, I should be doing it with the mindset that this is my business. So it's an interesting perspective on how you can move toward that world of becoming rich by focusing on a goal and acting right now as if that goal is a reality. And he goes into other things, so like talking about creating value for everybody that you encounter, every person that you meet and talk to. And I think that there's a very good part in that book where he talks about creating value for other people that you interact with, that I think, even though it was written in 1908, it has applications today in networking. When you're talking to other people, you know, one challenge, you know, little bit of a secret. When I speak on stage or do something like this, it's fake. It's so fake. I actually am almost paralyzed by social anxiety, and most people don't realize that, but it is such a struggle for me. So the idea of going into a networking event where I'm not a speaker, or I'm not, you know, there for a dedicated specific thing, like, you know, advocating for Confirm It or something like that, is actually harder for me than most people realize. So with that, you know, something like this, it kind of sets the guidelines on what, if I'm in a social setting where I'm trying to network or interact with other professionals, but I'm not specifically selling to them. It tells me how to do that. And it talks about presenting and providing value to the people that you're interacting with by giving away your knowledge in a way that is most valuable and useful to them. So, you know, again, despite the fact that there are a few references to religion that you might go, and there, you know, some people have taken away this metaphysical angle on, you know, thinking or willing your richness into existence. In my opinion, that's not what he's saying at all. What he's saying what he's saying, in my opinion, is put your nose to the grindstone and do it. Act now, and here's how to act, and network now, and here's how to network. Which again, it was 1908. Who would have ever imagined? So that's one of my recommendations for today, and I think it's an interesting book. But again, with a little disclaimer, if you are somebody who's, you know, a little bit sensitive to ideas that might touch on religion or metaphysics.
So Holly, around that book, you actually made me think of another one, because they're very similar in concept when it comes to making money and acting like the millionaire, which is The Millionaire Next Door. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's exactly that. So it's ordinary people who are in fact millionaires. We're not talking about the Bill Gateses of the world and the Jeff Bezos of the world, but ordinary individuals who still live in middle class neighborhoods and just living normal lives. But because they are so deliberate with how and where their money goes and where they're spending it, they essentially are, like, if you ask them, how much are you spending on groceries in a month, basically, they could probably tell you to the dollar, because they are so in tune with where their money is going.
Exactly. And they're probably not among those people who are spending on frivolous things either.
Exactly.
You know, especially if they're your next door neighbor. That's very much a Warren Buffett kind of angle. That's something he's very well known for. He drives an old beat up car, lives in a regular old house. The guy is like the richest guy in the universe, kind of. So Yeah.
Well, I guess not the richest yet anymore, but yes,
No.
he's definitely up there.
Yeah, I think my most recent readings have said that Jeff Bezos may actually be heading in that direction very soon to be the first world's trillionaire. So maybe we could pick his brain at some point. I'd love to know how he got there. But you know what? I think that actually relates to a lot of things, because if you think about it, that's actually the concept that many people have read in Good to Great too. It's that hedgehog.
Yeah.
Focus and don't lose focus, and you will succeed. And again, a lot of the principles in the science of getting rich are also very similar to what I read in How to Win Friends and Influence People. I believe that's Dale Carnegie. So, I mean, quite frankly, all these rich people are telling us, but what you were saying, it kind of relates back to what you were saying before, is despite the fact that these people are pounding this idea into our head, we don't.
Yeah, because they're simple concepts. They're very simple concepts, but we make excuses because we self-sabotage. Why can't I say sabotage today? We self-sabotage. Oh, I don't want to go to a networking event because I'm not going to know anyone there. Exactly. That's the whole point of networking. You're getting to know brand new people. Oh, I don't want to introduce myself. They're going to think that I'm just emailing them because I want something. If you don't ask, you're not going to get anything.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So they're very simple on paper. They're very simple concepts, but we as humans just get in our heads so much that these books really teach you how to kind of break out of your behavior to become more successful in various ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're very important. It's important to follow this. And the one good thing about reading these kinds of books and dedicating some time to these kind of books when you are kind of at your leisure is that I think they're inspiring. I remember when I read 4-Hour Work Week. And of course, the name of the author is escaping me now, but fantastic book. And I was so inspired that I was going to do everything in that book. And for a little while, I started implementing certain aspects of it. I mean, obviously, I am employed and I have to work a little more than 4 hours, but there are certain time-saving measures that he does talk about in there that I tried. And then I just fell off and I went right back to my old bad habits. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of ties into the concept, kind of ties into the next book that I wanted to talk about. My book is called Velocity. So there's several authors on this book, Dee Jacobs, Susan Berglund, and Jeff Cox. What's fun about this one, and again, in my opinion, it might be a little bit more geared toward women than men, but I think anybody should read it because it's fantastic. And the reason why I say it's a little bit more geared toward women than men is that it is a novel. So instead of like the other books we've discussed where it's very much here's the strategy, here's the tactic, do this, do that, and here's a business case to prove it. This is written as a story and a romance at that, which you would think, okay, well.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by this, Holly.
I think what's fascinating about it is that they're teaching valuable business principles using a means of entertainment. And it is extremely valuable business principles. So basically the concept of the book, and again, a disclaimer with this one, the basic idea of the book is about manufacturing. And I realize not everybody's into manufacturing, but I will go so far as to say that everybody should read this book, no matter what, because the manufacturing piece is sort of a sideline that it doesn't matter. The principles you can learn in this book go way beyond the concept of manufacturing if you just use it and apply it. So the basic idea is we've all kind of heard of Six Sigma. Everybody's heard of lean. And many people, though I think probably fewer in my experience, are familiar with the theory of constraints. These are 3 different business practices that talk about different ways where you can maximize a manufacturing process. And Six Sigma is like, efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. Lean is this idea of continuous improvement, and constraints points out the fact that there are at times constraints within the process. Mm-hmm. So in those constraints, for example, one of my core roles as product marketing at Confirm It, one of the things I do is to make content. So, but I don't do it by myself. I write the content and I happen to type pretty quickly and I write pretty quickly. But then I have to send my stuff, my sort of works in progress, off to graphic designers who actually make it look good. They actually don't work as quickly as I do. Or maybe it's better to say that they have a bigger job than my typing is. So it takes them a little bit longer than it does me to type it up. With that, that is a constraint in the process for me putting out work. So you can see how manufacturing kind of, it applies to everybody to a certain extent. Again, me and making content, some of the responsibilities you have if you're working on an event, we're marketing people, you're building an event. Mm-hmm. If your people aren't getting back to you as quickly as you'd hope, or maybe, the event hosts, the managers at the hotels where you're having the event or whatever, they have backlogs, they take longer to get to you. Your end product is a manufactured product. Your end event has been manufactured by all these pieces. It's a matter with this book, they highlight all of these different points. Specifically around the theory of constraints and how to build in Six Sigma and Lean into the idea. So the goal with that is how to maximize your processes. And again, any process in my mind, how to maximize your process up to the constraints that you identify, and then how to continuously improve that maximization. So it's sort of combining that concept of Six Sigma, theory of constraints, and Lean, all into one thing to make sure that you are working to the optimal area within your ability. And what's beautiful about it is, and the theory of constraints, I think, requires the most explanation, because everybody wants to think we can just make constraints go away, and I don't agree. Constraints exist and they always will. The beauty of this is it makes you stop and think about what is constraining my processes and how much time am I wasting trying to maximize beyond that constraint? Am I continuing? I can just knock out written materials really quickly, but is that valuable? Could I be doing something more valuable if I just would acknowledge and accept the constraint? And that's where you get into that idea of maximizing your efficiency and being, continuously improving what you're working on. Mm-hmm. Velocity is a fantastic book that combines those theories. And again, it's told in a way that you don't mind reading by the pool. Because it is a romance, it is written as a romance novel, where you experience all this and you see these, this sort of fun way of approaching a business concept. Definitely one I highly recommend to anybody, and just so much to learn, regardless of the fact that it is intended for manufacturing.
So this is a business brain power book as well as a beach read.
Exactly. Awesome. So, I thought that was a good way to kind of sum everything up. From my perspective, this is the time when, it's weird right now, COVID and people locked at home and unemployment going through the roof. And I think it's we really need to be making the best use of our time. Mm-hmm. Everybody does. And figuring out how we can improve either on our current job or whatever our next venture is. Yeah. So I think that these books are a great start. And, there's probably a gazillion more. And I think we would love for anybody who's watching this to comment as well.
Yes, please. Because I'm looking for a recommendation. So yes, please put your comments
too.
Add your book to the comments.
Exactly. And like and subscribe to the video. And there's that little bell icon that reminds you whenever we go live or put up new videos. And of course, we hope you'll join us again. Our winding toward actually went a little long this time, but I think it was
we had some good conversation. We'll also include the links to all the books we talked about today in the description.
Yeah, good idea. So thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. We'll let you get back to your normal day. Do finish your cocktails in good health, and we'll see you next Friday, where we'll be talking about, there's a very good question. What are we talking about next week, Dina?
Automation?
Automation, I believe.
Automation.
Yes. Glad you remembered. It's Friday, long weekend. I don't need to remember these things. So, and speaking of which, Dina, you and of course everybody watching, have a lovely Memorial Day weekend, and don't get too sunburned.
Thank you.